Hello, I'm Marites Vitug, and this is Worldview, where we take a look at global, regional, and national affairs in conversations with officials, newsmakers, and analysts. Joining us is Canada's Ambassador to the Philippines, David Hartman. We will be talking about new developments in the relations between our two countries, the Philippines and Canada. Welcome to the show, Ambassador. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much. It's my sincere pleasure to be here with you today.
I think we should start with the most exciting, shall I say, development that Canada has given the Philippines free access to your dark vessel detection program.
Yes.
What is this? Can you walk us through? Is this more to monitor illegal fishing or to surveil ships that enter the country illegally?
Yeah. Well, Canada is very pleased to be able to offer this capacity to the government and ultimately to the people of the Philippines. Its intention, it is part of our Departments of Fisheries and Oceans back in Canada. So its primary purpose is for IUU, so illegal, underreported, and unregulated fishing. So we've used it, I think, on a global basis so far to enforce rules, standards, best practices on the seas related to the fishing industry. That being said, it's a very powerful technology. It utilizes a satellite-based systems. It's a multifaceted, layered system using proprietary Government of Canada technology as well as commercially available technology, and it's put together in a bit of an amalgam of a program. And ultimately, it enhances capacity for maritime domain awareness. So it will facilitate the government of the Philippines just to have a better sense of who are in your territorial waters, who's within your exclusive economic zone. But candidly speaking, we've given it, free to the government of the Philippines for at least a 5-year period for the government to be able to utilize it, frankly, ultimately, how the government of the Philippines sees fit.
So is it the Philippine Coast Guard which will be on top of this? And will there be other government offices that will be able to access?
Yes. So it'll be managed on behalf of the government of the Philippines by the Maritime Watch Center. So ultimately, my understanding is, in discussions that we've had with the various elements, the various layers of the government of the Philippines, is that many people throughout the entire breadth and scope of the government of the Philippines will have access to the technology, but it'll, from the government of Canada's perspective, we'll have a single point of contact who can manage the logistics and the administration, ultimately, of how that technology will be used by the government of the Philippines.
So there will be a training phase, or have you started the training phase? Or
no, but very soon. So we are really in the high throes of preparing all of the necessary groundwork for the implementation of the technology. So in the next few weeks, actually, there will be a whole series of training courses, subject matter experts coming from Canada, from our minister, our Department of Fisheries and Oceans, people from some of the private sector data providers, to be able to train all of the various operators in the government of the Philippines.
So this is near real time?
Correct. It is not real time, but it is near real time. So usually only a handful of hours between satellite passes and overviews until the data is available. So it's as close as you can get to real time without it actually being in real time.
So what factors led to this sharing of this very precious data, I think? Because as you know, the Philippines is really needs to keep watch over its waters, especially in the West Philippine Sea.
Of course. I mean, part of this is a bit of an outgrowth of our IndoPacific strategy, which our government launched just about a year ago.
Yes,
so at the end of this month, will be the 1-year anniversary of the launch of our IndoPacific strategy. And so we have had many years of collaboration with the government of the Philippines, both from a Coast Guard to a Coast Guard perspective. So of course, both Canada and the Philippines are maritime countries.
Yes.
We have one of the absolute longest coast lines in the world.
You have the longest coastline in the world.
We have 3 oceans, right? The Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Pacific. So we're very proud of the fact that we have a lot of expertise in maritime domain awareness and maritime surveillance. We have a very highly professionalized Coast Guard. And so, part of our engagement in this region of the world is to be able to respond to the needs and the requirements of our friends and our partners. And so this is one area where the government of the Philippines has said, look, this is an area, if the government of Canada can work with us to help us to augment, increase our capacity in this area, that would be something that, the government of the Philippines would be very, very happy to receive. And so, we're blessed with the fact that we have that capacity, and so it's an area where which is very ripe for cooperation.
You mentioned the Indo-Pacific strategy, and I read a comment that said it's the most ambitious effort in a generation
Yes.
to focus attention and resources on the Indo-Pacific, on this region.
Yes.
Yeah. So, where does the Philippines? What's the Philippines' place in all this?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it represents a sort of generational shift in our thinking and our policy engagement. And the Philippines, quite candidly, is really very much at the forefront of this strategy. It is an Indo-Pacific strategy, and where the Philippines is located geographically, I often refer to it somewhat in jest with my colleagues. It's either the elbow or the knee between North and South Asia, right? It is the connective region. So the terrain, the area that the Philippines occupies in the global commons, but particularly in this region of the world, is of paramount importance. It's of paramount importance for geostrategic interests. It's of paramount importance for geoeconomic interests. And so the Philippines, candidly, is really at the forefront of our strategy.
And also, being both maritime countries and you with 3 oceans surrounding you, what lessons can the Philippines learn from Canada when it comes to inculcating in the youth, among young Filipinos, appreciation of our heritage as a maritime country? Just a bit of a background, we're very much land people. Even
Yes.
if we're surrounded by waters,
Yes.
our orientation when we were growing up was really land. Our policies are land-based.
Right.
We have the biggest army. I mean, we have a bigger army than Navy.
Right.
Is that the case in Canada? Or how did you really make your people aware of your maritime heritage?
Yeah, well, I think, from coast to coast to coast in Canada, as we like to say, we have a diffused population, but the population in Canada, largely about 85% of it, lives within about 200 kilometers of the U.S. border, of the 49th parallel. And so, we have a great maritime tradition in Canada. The seas have always been the way in which we've been able to trade, right? Canada's blessed to be a prosperous nation, but we are fundamentally a trading nation. Our prosperity depends on our ability to trade with the world. So how do we get our products, our goods to foreign markets? It's via the sea. So, the vast majority of our major population centers, I mean, you have cities like Vancouver on the Pacific coast of Canada, which is, situated, on the ocean. But many of our large population centers are, into the interior of Canada. Some of them are on our St. Lawrence Seaway or our Great Lakes. So water is something that Canada has an abundance of, both on the oceans, but also from a freshwater perspective. So it's something that is just, imbued in our culture. And, from, time way back when the first, sort of European settlers came to Canada, to establish roots there. So we have a very long and deep maritime tradition. But I would say in today's day and age, a lot of it is predicated upon economic opportunity, right? Our ability to get goods and services to market, our ability to connect to the world. Obviously, with the proliferation of air travel, it's become a little bit less with the cargo, but it's still something that I think has been in our body politic and culturally in our societies for generations. In
other interviews, Ambassador, you spoke about an upcoming MOU, Memorandum of Understanding on Defense Cooperation.
Yes.
Is that different from a visiting forces agreement, and how is it different, and what's the status of this MOU?
Yeah, so our memorandum of understanding really would be the sort of entry base of establishing the broad parameters of our defense cooperation between Canada and the Philippines. In effect, it is an articulation of our intention to want to collaborate and partner with the people of the Philippines, with the armed forces of the Philippines, in all the various branches and all the various services. A visiting forces agreement would be a next step, right? That would be a deepening of our military-to-military engagement. And so for us, we want to start with a solid base to delineate and define the areas in which we think there is mutual complementarity between our respective militaries. Canada has a small but a very highly professional and highly capable military in all of our branches, Navy, Army, Air Force. And so we think there's an awful lot that we can contribute to the ongoing efforts to professionalize, to train, and ultimately to equip the armed forces in the Philippines, all the various branches, including on the civilian side, the Coast Guard. And so for us, it's something that we want to establish a good base and to really work from there. We do want to branch out. We do think we would want to get ourselves to a place where we would have a visiting forces agreement because Canada wants to really demonstrate to the people of the Philippines our commitment to the people of the Philippines, to your country, to the defense of your sovereignty, because we are very much alike. We're both committed multilateralists, and I think one of the ways that we can prove this to the people of the Philippines is to have an increased level of military collaboration.
So where are we now in terms of this MOU? Are there any bottlenecks, or when do you see it being sealed?
If I'm going to be truthful with you, we're pretty much done. We've concluded the language now. What we're waiting for now is an auspicious opportunity to ink it, to finalize it. So for all intents and purposes, it's completed. There was a lot of negotiation. I mean, there was multiple stakeholders in the government of the Philippines, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of National Defense, and we've been very keen, to get this done. We've made our interests very clear to the government of the Philippines, and even myself personally with the president. So we're very glad to know that the heavy lifting is done. And now on to the next steps, on to implementation and moving on from there.
So related question is Canada open to doing joint patrols with the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea? Because that's been a question that is being asked nowadays.
I mean, Canada, I won't profess to speak on behalf of the Royal Canadian Navy and the Armed Forces of Canada, but as we deepen our engagement together, I mean, one can see the logical sequences of how we would collaborate together more and more. The fact that over the most recent months we've participated in the Sama-Sama exercise, which was a very significant milestone for the augmentation of our bilateral relationship. So we really have been making great strides. We've had 4 Canadian warships here in Philippine territorial waters, again, over the last couple of months. We've had a replenishment ship here as well. We've had maritime surveillance aircraft here as well. So as I said to many of my colleagues when we invited guests on board, both the HMCS Ottawa and the HMCS Vancouver, there's nothing more tangible than standing on $1.5 billion warship to say, we are here to support the people of the Philippines, right? We come, in support of the Philippines to help defend, the interests of the Philippines. And so, can you see a logical sequence of that relationship developing even more further? Yes, in my, broad estimation. That being said, we have no interest in further inflaming tensions. I'm a diplomat. My job is to broker discussions, to broker mutual understanding. But our job is also to support our friends, our partners, and our allies, particularly in their time of need. And, Canada is a committed multilateralist, as is the Philippines. It's in our DNA. Again, that goes back to what we discussed a few moments ago. We are a trading nation, right? And for our nation to be able to trade, you have to have a rules-based international order. You need to have predictability, stability, transparency. That's the only environment in which, your economy can flourish. And so, there's that sort of realpolitik interest there, but there's also the philosophical approach as well. So yes, I mean, we will definitely broaden our engagement, potentially even into areas like that.
I think, wasn't Sama-Sama the first time that the Royal Canadian Navy engaged in an exercise with the Philippines?
In the Philippines,
In
yes.
the
So
Philippines.
a Philippine American-led exercise, yes.
Yes.
We have had the good fortune of participating in many multilateral exercises in the IndoPacific, for many, many, many years. But this is the first time that it was it started in Philippine territorial waters, and that we were able to participate. And of course, with the eventual signing of the Defense MOU, we'll be able to do even more.
So I think this is also because of geopolitics. China has become more assertive, and the Philippines, as you said, the geography of the Philippines is becoming really central in all these discussions. So your Indo-Pacific strategy is also influenced by this changing geopolitical situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, our ability to get access to global markets, our ability to help promote and project Canadian national interest, that is the promotion of democracy, human rights, rule of law, all of these things that we hold really near and dear to our hearts, the things that Canadians come to expect of their governments, regardless of the political stripe, of the political power, party in power rather, back in Canada. So absolutely, it's an articulation of our interests, moving forward. And, for a long time, Canadians, as a result of our history, have been very Euro-Atlantic centric in our mindset and in our mentality. But the reality is, Canada is one of the few remaining nations on Earth that is a large-scale migrant welcoming country, right? I mean, last year we took in 1 million immigrants to Canada. And so, in order to do so, the top sources of immigration to Canada now are all from the Indo-Pacific region of the world. India, the Philippines, China, throughout the region, so all throughout South Asia. So, we really do need to understand and articulate what our interests here are, first and foremost to the people of Canada, right, to demonstrate why this region of the world is of such primordial importance, right? It's economics, it's values, it's geopolitics, it's an amalgam of all of the above. Right, so it's important that we're able to delineate that.
So let's go to the rhetoric of our relations. It's just interesting that when your foreign minister came, she said this is a time for ambition.
Yes.
In Manila-Ottawa relations, and
Absolutely.
our Foreign Affairs Department said it's a renaissance.
Yes.
And another description was it's a high point. So we must have come from a low point.
I wouldn't say we're coming from a low point, but for us, frankly speaking, I mean, we've always had a remarkably strong base, right? And I think it's really important to highlight the fact that we're starting from a base of our people-to-people ties. We have 1 million Canadian citizens of Filipino heritage. And that population continues to grow. In addition, we have, hundreds of thousands of other, temporary workers in Canada as well. So we already have, I describe this relationship, yes, the geopolitics, the geostrategy, but it's also a familial relationship. So as our government is trying to reinvigorate our presence in the Indo-Pacific, we want to start first and foremost here in the Philippines, right? Because we have a familial relationship. It's really important. And so there's no better place to start than here. I think philosophically, we are very much aligned in terms of our interests, the complementarities between our respective foreign policy interests, our commercial interests, our commitment to combating climate change, etc. No matter what the metric of assessment is, we are very, very much like-minded. And so, of course, first and foremost, you want to have a success in the development of that relationship. So how are you going to achieve that success most successfully? It's by partnering with like-minded partners. And so, yes, we see the potential here. We know there's latent potential, more potential to be explored, and candidly, more opportunities to be exploited that will be to the benefit both of the people of Canada and the people of the Philippines.
And I think you wrote, Ambassador, or you mentioned that the Canadian Embassy here is the fourth largest mission in the world.
Yes. Yes. So that in and of itself, I think, is indicative of the opportunity that exists. And we have a very large migration program in our embassy. We also do a lot of HR, human resources and financial services for our missions throughout the Indo-Pacific because of the high caliber of the workforce that's available here. It's an English-speaking market, the ability to integrate seamlessly. And, Filipinos, as a diaspora population as well, with population all over the world, they understand our way of doing business. So the ability to scale up quickly is very easy for us here. Plus, candidly speaking, we are tremendously well received here. And so, again, we want to go where we feel welcome. But first and foremost, it's because of the human capital that exists here, the high caliber of the workforce, which is the vast majority of our colleagues at our embassy here.
And maybe to the last and final question is on cybersecurity.
Yes.
You mentioned that we will eventually have, or we have cybersecurity cooperation, because what happened recently in Canada when there was what we call spamouflage against your Prime Minister and other politicians.
Yes.
And it was, and you have Global Affairs Canada has a rapid response
mechanism. Yeah.
Is that something that you will be able to share with the Philippines, this expertise on how will it move forward?
Yeah. So look, I mean, we all know all too well, and I needn't tell you that we're living in an era rather of information and disinformation,
Yes.
and particularly as of late, sadly, disinformation. And so I think we all have, Canada is a member of the G7 and the G20 and so many other. Canada is a member of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. We have world-class capacity. On cyber defense, cybersecurity is a huge industry in Canada. So that absolutely will be an area in which we want to develop and deepen our engagement with the government of the Philippines. Our rapid response mechanism is just to try and call out and target, basically attacks against our body politic, against our politicians, assaults against our democracy. Because if we don't work with our like-minded partners to protect and defend our democracies, we know all too well, sadly, that our democracies are at risk. And we want to make sure that our electorates, to the extent feasible, have the facts, right? The quantitatively, provable facts. And of course, it's very easy in today's day and age to manipulate the facts with the use of artificial intelligence and all sorts of other technologies to manipulate people's opinions, and often, sadly, for nefarious purposes and with nefarious intentions. And so we're very proud of the fact, I am very proud of the fact that Canada has considerable capacity in that domain, and it will be very much at the center of our engagement with the government of the Philippines, both from a public sector, private sector, civil society, working with NGOs, just to create a greater cyber awareness, how to look for to try and separate the wheat from the chaff, as we say in Canada, to truth from fact from fiction, so that when people make decisions, that they can make decisions, with the facts at their disposal and with the greatest amount of clarity and assurance that they can, because it can be very dangerous, as we all know.
I think that's going to be one very exciting facet of our cooperation, especially now with the Philippines monitoring also this information coming from China. This is a very recent development here, as you know, Ambassador.
And candidly, it's both state and non-state actors, right?
Correct.
It's a lot of criminality, a lot of ransomware attacks. I mean, my goodness, we're seeing things manifest themselves in so many different ways that are just fundamentally threats to our interests as societies, right? And of course, amongst friends, we really want to help one another to make sure that we have the most acute awareness possible of the risks that we confront together. We want to try and combat those risks together, and what we really believe that we can help bring to bear here across the spectrum of stakeholders is capacity. So we think we can bring some true capacity building. So it really truly is an area of tremendous opportunity. It is very exciting, and I think it's an area that we'll look forward over the next number of months to be able to engage in much more robustly with a whole myriad of stakeholders here in the Philippines.
Yes, on that exciting and favorable note, we have to end this interview. Sorry, we don't have a lot of time, but thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming to Rappler. And thank you to our viewers for listening and watching. This has been Worldview. I'm Marites Vitug. Till next time.